Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 4 with the Road to 56 mod. Now, just sort of doing some sort of setups here, and I was looking at things here. Germany starts out with a cavalry brigade. Now, the German army, I want to be very specific about this. The German army, the Heers, had one cavalry division during World War II. I don't think it had any other cavalry divisions before World War II, and I'm talking this is coming off of the 100,000 man reorganized post-World War I army. Obviously, before, during World War I, before World War I, it had more cavalry divisions. But during World War I, it had one and only one German army cavalry division. The Waffen-SS had a bunch of cavalry divisions. Some sort of go away, well, a couple officially go away, and units are reorganized. Some sort of hang around, but are shadows of themselves, and other units are moved into other newly started up formations. They had a bunch, and there was a bunch of which are, are they really in the German army or not? They had a bunch of like Cossack and other sort of I'm not talking allied like as in Hungarian or Romanian army. I'm talking about units that are fighting for the Wehrmacht, sort of foreign units fighting for the Wehrmacht. There are a bunch and a few cavalry divisions in that. Yes, the 1st Cavalry Division. And so, I don't know. And so there's a bunch of other cavalry formations. And I don't know how many, but, and I'm not sure whether they're calling themselves regiments or troops as opposed to battalions. Different armies use, and sometimes armies will within themselves use confusing titles. There are a bunch of other cavalry formations within the German army that are often like attached to an infantry division. I'm not talking about horses drawing or horse-drawn artillery or horse-drawn supply wagons, cook wagons, whatever. I'm talking about like reconnaissance units. There were a bunch, and I don't know quite how many. I don't know if any of them really were to be, categorized as a brigade. And brigade is a bit of a nebulous term. Depending on the army, it can be interchangeable with regiments. If you're looking at a regiment, sort of in the British tradition, as sort of a permanent ongoing formation that can have one or more battalions, and the battalions may be fighting in different divisions. So you can have, a regiment that, especially like in World War I or World War II, may balloon up to 6 battalions, but those 6 battalions may be in 3 or 6 different divisions, and they're sort of split up and sort of strange. They're sort of an outlier to most, because this continues to this day. Thanks, Arno, for the link. And so you have, that kind of thing. But in the U.S., it's not quite as like a permanent formation or regiment. So you have like a regimental combat team, which is, partially it's my own confusion, part because I've read so much stuff, some of it based in different nations, some of it just changes over time because I'm reading 18th century, early 19th century, or Napoleonic books and sources, and then I'm reading, World War I, World War II, modern. So what these terms mean, but brigade and regiment are sort of an interchangeable size formation, and they're not as, and divisions change from armies as well. Division is meant to be not some divisions, like particularly in the U.S. or other things, have become permanent divisions. The 101st Airborne Division, or the 7th Cavalry Division, which really sort of more starts off of, if I may be getting that, starts out as the 7th Cavalry Regiment. And so, but a division for sort of a long term, not maybe long term as in many, many years, but for a war, is meant to be a permanent unit, so that each of the formations amongst themselves learn and train and work together as a relatively harmonious thing. You may ad hoc add elements to it and periodically pull off elements to do special tasks. Germans are famous for this with their Kampfgruppe. But it's meant to be a cohesive military unit, generally 10,000 plus manpower. So we can see, well, that obviously won't have it. Let's click on an infantry division here, and let's go back to stats here. Max speed, organization, reliability. Do we have? I normally don't pay too much attention to these, quite honestly. Organization, suppression, supply. Just wanting to see manpower, what they're. Combat ratio, with I don't see right offhand. On the top left. HP. Okay, I guess hit points is what we're looking at here. 9. That. So, okay. So it's not giving a good, a base number to work off of here. Obviously, we have infantry equipment here, but I was looking for, manpower usage here. I guess 9,000 up here. That's more top right to me, but yes, 9K. So generally the idea is 10,000 plus power for a division. So yes, above equipment. Yes, I found it. Thanks, Slum. And so I'm not used, like I say, that doesn't normally concern me so much, but where I'm more interested in this as a formation. So a lot of German infantry divisions, and it depends on what Welle they're from or wave they're from, they did have cavalry formation set up primarily as, reconnaissance, rapid reaction type elements. So the German army did have a bunch of other, guys riding horses, mostly definitely by World War II. They weren't like doing saber charges. I think only like officers or somebody would actually have a sword on them. They were just sort of mounted infantry. Probably would be dragoons as sort of as much of anything proper term for it. So they did not. Now, what I sort of started with is I don't, and I'd love whether anybody in chat wants to pipe up on this or later on. This is a fundamental, and it's not just Paradox, but Paradox is super guilty of this. Why do they start the 1936 here with the 1 Cavalry Brigade, when I know in 1936 they have 1 Cavalry Division and it is a full division, the German Army starting point? Why don't they start it with a template that matches the reality at the time, instead of me having to come in here and expand this into a useful formation? I don't get this philosophy. Why start this infantry division out here with just engineers and support artillery, which we know they had reconnaissance, which whether that would be an infantry reconnaissance units, because they had those too. They had bicycle reconnaissance units. They had horse reconnaissance units. They had motorized, whether soft skin, with the Americans, or the Germans with Kubelwagens, or armored reconnaissance units, with up to medium tanks, functioning in the reconnaissance type elements. So they had reconnaissance elements. So why do this gradual progression setup? And I don't know, is this just they're not being creative, or is they're just meeting players' expectations? What I would do is through a mix of things here. A mix of, let me get rid of this so you can see better. A mix over here of doctrines, which could be this or this, just, hey, better skilled at reconnaissance, and you move through this. And so this makes sense to me, the idea that you get better and better with reconnaissance, as well as an improvement. Well, I guess half-tracks could be part of the improvement, but also here, get better armored cars, better, maybe start out with, a soft skin car and whatnot. And as time goes on, you improve how good the reconnaissance is operating with a division, and whether it's categorized as support. And you could have at some point here, go back over to here, to here, and click over in the support tab. You can have multiple, whether you add or replace different types of reconnaissance support element. So you could have a bicycle. You could go into the weeds, and where I would want to go is like foot reconnaissance, horse reconnaissance, bicycle reconnaissance. But even if you can just do some sort of foot / bicycle / whatever sort of, and then you could have horse reconnaissance, cavalry reconnaissance, or motorized reconnaissance, or armored reconnaissance, which obviously is still motorized, but have different reconnaissance formations and set that up. And so that is what changes over time, not whether a division has reconnaissance or doesn't have reconnaissance over time. And that's, so instead of this sort of starting out with base minimum levels and improve over time, is how I would organize this up differently. And so it gives players, part of this is because we understand this is a game. You want to improve things, use your experience that you earn either through training or through leadership, where you have, like, here is gaining daily army experience, or through combat or whatever. You're taking that and then you're improving your situation over time. It's getting better. I'm all for that, but I would be starting out with a more historically based, more balance-based type system, and I just don't know, and I would love to hear. I think it's because most players don't quite go into that much detail. And you're right, Lum, and it may be just I'm an over-detailed player. I would like to go, and I'll use this because I do believe in national characteristics generally. Go into a German level of wanting to play with the detail of, infantry division get motorized reconnaissance, soft skinned, but motorized divisions get armored reconnaissance, so that they have, they're a little bit better, and obviously armored reconnaissance for panzer divisions or something like, be able to go into the details much more. But that's how I would look at it. So let's come here, because I do want some some horse units. So let's look at this and see what we can do here. If we were to add that's pretty cheap for 16, and we'll get that up to being somewhat of an effective unit. So there we go. And this Schnell division over here, because we see that this template is pretty bad, we're going to move it over to what is still being called a cavalry brigade. So now we have 2 of these. Shouldn't it have? Yes, now it does have the support artillery. Okay, good. It's going to get its support artillery equipment. Okay, so but those watching later on YouTube, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Because I would probably, my design choices would be too far into the detail. So now we have a better look at what the Czechs are doing, but they're in an impossible situation now. Speed this up a little bit. Well, we can do better. Well, let's get, since we're getting close here, and we do have a lot of political power with this, I'm not used to getting this much this fast. Chief of the Navy, Eric Reeder or Carl Donitz. Convoy rating efficiency or capital ship screen attack. Well, we're going to try to avoid combat, so we're going to go a bit unhistorical and go Eric Reeder. No, Donitz, sorry, that's Donitz. What am I saying? Goring, Reeder, Kesselring. We're going to go with air superiority, benefit from Goring, and he's holding a cute tiger there. Armor genius. Okay, that requires blitzkrieg tactics now. That's oh, what are we doing? Clicking here. I think that is. No, isn't it one? Oh, here. Okay, that's 35 days. So we might be doing that really shortly after the fate of Czechoslovakia. So, we'll leave a slot open for Rommel there. Well, we have a lot of infantry divisions, or division recovery rate. Well, we could do both, but bomber air interception, get milk. Yeah, let's do that. And Schroner. Schroner was just an awful person. And not that good of a military leader. Not that he was a bad military thinker, but he was a bad leader of men. So now we have a bit of a southern force here too. deal with, and I probably even should send some of these, though I probably won't, up north to deal with Norway. We could use some motorized divisions and improved oil processing. This is the thing that I'm most interested in to know with this, is how well we're going to do with the new oil. As Germany played it as Britain, but Britain always has that American source for oil as a option. Yeah, let's fate of Czechoslovakia. Okay, well, let's deal with fate of Czechoslovakia. We will set them up as a puppet state. So we've now got that. Events decision. Yes, 13 days left. With the Czechoslovak state out of the picture, the balance of power in Southeastern Europe has shifted dramatically. Czech arms and money were used to support a number of countries that now need to look for a new sponsor. Perhaps it's time to remind Prince Paul of that fact. Okay, yeah, we'll put some pressure on him. Okay, we've got that. And I do think before we really want to go in, let's do Blitzkrieg tactics. I'll take 35 days. Advanced machine tools. Yeah, we'll go with that bonus. And because we got all of, well, Bohemian Moravia's industrial capacity, that increases things a lot. Now, we could use more motorized, so we will add to our production of trucks by 2. Now, if we were to, the other thing here is, let's take a look at our basic infantry division. If we were to do anti-tank support, let's see, we can do that. We need 2,500 plus anti-tank guns. So what we need to really do is ramp up anti-tank gun production. Actually, I want to start another. And we can also throw in some more, some Panzer IIIs a little bit more pushed forward. Now we have some more civilian factories as well. Fairly decent radar coverage. Once we get controlling up here, I'll probably put one a bit further north. That'll cover there. There we go. Hungary has declared war on Carpathia, Ukraine. I think this is going to be a limited little thing here. Carpathia, Ukraine has capitulated. And that's something a little more intrinsic to the mod. Hungary did basically invade this part of Czechoslovakia when it was Czechoslovakia. And there was, oh, I don't know, 4 or 5 people that died in the fighting. I mean, it was a minor sort of combat situation in the scale in terms of World War II. Hey, optimistic knowledge. One radio station in South for Yugoslavia and Greece, by the way. Kind of lurking to study. Okay, no problem. Yeah, that could be an idea. Let's go back and look at the current. So we have right now here, down here in Tyrol, this would expand it a bit, but since you don't get to pick, you're just in the state, I've become to hate the state mechanics in this. If I could build it in the province, oh no, I don't want to do that, but yes, cancel that. Build it a bit more south, as opposed to, because you see they're going to move them sort of north. So this is pretty good here, I think, covering it in Tyrol. Obviously, we've done that here. I mean, just the northern bit, but mostly actually to help the situation with that. Yeah. I get some of their ideas for state mechanics. Part of it, and I think at its core, is this. Because if you know, in Hearts of Iron 3, they're basically using coal as, or energy or whatever, but it's basically mostly coal. Obviously, there's some hydroelectric going on and whatnot, but as the limiting factor to how many factories you can have. Where in this game, they're using slots. What I would do is move all of this down to the provincial level and just give, hey, this province here, whatever you would want to call it, this foreign province, no slots for anything. This forest province and this forest province, no slots. Frankfurt, a bunch of slots. Maybe these plains along the river here, 1 slot. So and then obviously it takes a little more work, and Kessel here is pictured in a forest, but that's town. So I would do it. I just move everything to the state or to the provincial level, because we do have a state that's 1 province size, so everything is meshed together there. And of course, you can go out to, well, some of these islands out here that are 1 province islands or states, but they're also that. So operation investigation, it's a linear programming and such. Okay, cool. Good luck on your exam. So I would do all of that. I hate that there can only be 1 airbase in a state. Now here, it may not be that critical, because if you hold this state over here and there's an airbase over here, you can fly effectively in most aircraft over this state or region. But if you're looking here, it's wacky. So yeah, not in favor of it. We're getting air stuff because I hit the base, but in this state here, they get pretty damn big. So if you control here or you can control here, and this is just huge distances. Well, optimistic knowledge. Things may have changed since my day because I'm admittedly a bit older, but for any job I've ever had, they have never, and I've applied to various jobs, but I've applied to a lot more jobs than I've ever gotten, but no one's ever asked for my grades. They've wanted to know what school I graduated from, and now schools concerned with grades, and so if you were going from high school to university, that really could be an issue. But so don't, maybe it's different where you are, and like probably in Japan, grades they probably do want to look at your grades when you're going in to yeah, grades can count, but so I'm not saying not to try hard. I'm just saying don't sweat it if it doesn't go perfect. And yeah, resources, I would agree, is a better method, but well, I think slots are necessary so you can't build a huge number of factories in Gibraltar, per se, that kind of thing. But I don't know about you, but in most of the nations that I've played, now admittedly I mostly play majors, I've never really had a problem with enough energy. I mean, it's never really. Now, Germany was, very coal rich, very hydroelectric rich, especially in the rural regions. So it had it was an issue. I mean, they had to keep mining the coal. It was a thing they had to deal with, but it was never the real limiting factor for German industry. So why have a resource in the game that is not that critical, is sort of their thinking. Well, they already graduated told me that just because he wanted to end with a decent grade in the end, basically. The experience only matters for the first job, and the grade barely matters. Yeah, it's your qualifications. Now they do want to, like, maybe if you're going to some elite job somewhere, that you've got very high levels in their particular thing. So if you're going for an electrical engineering job, and you have electrical engineering classes, and you're going and you're at the top of your class, that might be a thing. And I'm not saying you shouldn't try hard. I'm just saying you shouldn't stress over it. There's a big difference between working and trying hard and stressing over something. Hey, Ellen Devout. Good to have you here. Yeah, I have not played Victoria, so I cannot. I mean, I own it, but I've not played it, so I can't comment realistically on, hopefully on how that is looking compared to this. And so, and because we can just in public forums, I should say, in forums. I've talked with some of the developers and also watched some of their different Q&As with different things. They really tried with this game, more so than Hearts of Iron 3, to try to distill it down into critical decision-making things. And so how do I put it? Like a very important resource in World War II is wood. Wood is an incredibly important resource in it. One of the things that is limiting in some nations is high quality wood to make gun stocks, particularly Japan. Japan, none of its trees can make a gun stock for shit. It incredibly bad wood. So all of the guns, rifles, even the high quality ones made in the good times, are two-piece gun stocks, because to try to get the sort of lower part of the shoulder stock coming out, it will the wood just isn't strong enough, so they glue two pieces of wood together and hook them together, and that works well enough. They just don't have a good hardwood in Japan to make a good gun stock, but that really isn't the deciding matter. And actually, sort of, Germany's having a bit of a problem mid-late war, and they start doing laminated stocks, laminated layers of wood, and it works better. Laminated is better than at least from a military perspective and a production perspective. Laminated wood is better, and it's easier to get a hold of. So it's a factor. Now, it also, you can put into, wood is used whether in aircraft frames like the Mosquito. The Germans try to do a wood framed aircraft, but they only have one copy of the formula to make the glue that works really good. And when the factory gets bombed during the prototype stage, they lose the formula is burnt up in the factory, and they can't replicate it. Oh my God, people, you only have one copy of the formula for the glue to hold the laminated wood together for the aircraft. Yeah, okay, so they end up not doing it. So they don't do it. So wood is very important, but it's really not the decision factor on whether rifles get made or whatnot. But for nations like Japan and Germany, Japan is going along fighting its war against China, and it's limited by the amount of steel it can get. Partially, it's been embargoed, pushed by America to stop selling steel to Japan because of its actions in China, but also simply the import-export economy. It's, in Manchukuo, it's producing as much steel as it can. In Japan, it's producing as much steel as it can, and quality does matter there. But it's producing, like I say, it's producing as much steel as it can within its own things, with its own abilities. And because steel is both comes from a resource-dependent, iron, coal, carbon mixing, but it's also manufacturing. So how many steel plants you have, or how much steel a particular steel plant can make. So it's a mix of a resource slash manufactured product. And so, but it does have an import-export economy situation as buying foreign steel from somewhere. Quite possibly the Soviet Union. And so Japan is trying to get steel, but it can't get enough steel for its needs. And the bribe that the army pays to get the Navy to go to war with America is, hey, we'll give you, I don't know, it's like 20 or 30% more steel allotment to build your ships. Because, so this is a situation. Japan in mid-1941, Japan is at peace with everybody but basically China at this point, in mid-1941. So obviously there's a war raging, but it's not attacking Britain. It has occupied Indochina, but it's not attacked in meaningful ways. There's been the Panay incident and a few other bombing incidences, and some of the contingencies, and some ships have been accidentally shot upon, but there's no real war going on. And the war or battles or whatever with the Soviet Union up on the border have come to an end. So it's more or less at peace outside of China. China it's a real war, but it's going on there. And the Navy, and they don't have enough metal, steel for their tanks, for their artillery pieces, for their rifles, for their ships, or their aircraft engines, or their truck engines, or they don't have enough steel to go around to all of their needs that they could build. They have industrial capacity to use more steel, meaning the rifle factory could make more rifles if you gave them more steel. The artillery factory can make more artillery if you gave them more steel. The tank factory could make more tanks if you gave them more steel. The shipyards can build more ships if you could give them more steel. So steel is a limiting factor for Japan. Hey, Toy Jet. Good to have you here. So this is a real problem. And so in 1941, the army is basically controlling the government. I think it's around July, June is when Tojo becomes premier or prime minister. Allergies, yes, I hear. So, you know, Japan has this real problem going on. And to get the bribe, to get the Navy is, hey, yeah, if you just agree to attack America, we'll up your steel allotment by a considerable amount. Okay, so steel is a real decision factor for Japan. Also, oil becomes one. And similarly with Germany. Germany can't make enough steel for its needs, but it can nearly make enough steel for its capacity to use it. But one of its biggest problems is high quality steel, so that's why the veins are now extinct, but that are shipped out via Narvik, but it's actually Swedish steel up in here. I think it has tungsten and other things in it, and there, to my understanding, is before the veins ran out, no one kept some raw elements of the ore to find out just what that ore was that was made such good high quality steel, because it had other trace elements. It wasn't just pure iron and carbon heated up. There was some other trace elements in it. So, you know, it's an alloy. So Germany has, you know, so steel quality is an issue to steel. And so, I don't know, things like truck frames and shovels can be made with low quality steel. But artillery barrels, artillery parts, you know, the trails, the things that go behind the artillery pieces, and a lot of those parts of an artillery piece can be made with relatively low quality steel, but the barrels themselves, because that's where the high pressures and the erosion of shooting often steel, and can be low quality steel. The artillery shells going out of the artillery can be low quality steel, but the artillery barrels need to be high quality steel, and to have good quality armor, you need good quality steel. So there's some elements that require high quality steel in production. Other elements, hey, as long as it's steel, it works, kind of thing. You know, it doesn't need to be super high quality. And so you have that. So Germany's biggest issues are with quality of steel, more so than just the sheer amount of steel. Of course, oil. I know we all went down the rabbit hole here, but the major decision factors, as in, what are we doing this season on this front? Are we going on the offensive or staying on the defensive? And especially if you look at, hey, thanks for following the channel. Especially if you're looking at the Eastern Front, you really have three fronts, you know, Army Group North, Army Group Center, and Army Group South. And they were forming a sort of Army Group caucus at one point, adding to that. And so when they're making their decisions of what to do, it's Army Group South that gets the fuel to go on the offensive. It's not that Army Group North, which is mostly just sort of, you know, holding the line up, you know, not just in front of Leningrad, but up here. And Army Group Central is, you know, holding in the center. It's not that they don't have the military power to go on an offensive. I believe they do. My friend Django, who isn't here right now, has really been delving deep and talking to the author, and sent me some really, really good books that he's gotten. He sent me some excerpts previously on the books, looking at Barbarossa in excruciating detail. And he's been communicating with the author, and he sent some replies that were specifically to him, and some replies to somebody else that had queried him that he got, and he sent those along to me, and I haven't read them, but they're, you know, they're pages of stuff. So so I'm just, part of this is I'm guessing, but I do believe the German army had the offensive power. Now, you really have to look at the, you know, the details of the Soviets versus the Germans. You know, in the spring summer 42 up in this region, but I do believe the Germans could have gone on the offensive here. Maybe not on great huge offensive, but they could have gone on an offensive. But the main problem was not enough fuel, so they focused their fuel. Hey, Nagaro, they focused their fuel to push down here. So that's their decision. So this is, the designers of the game want to get, and this goes back to whether coal or energy or whatever you want to call it should be the determining factors for the amounts of factories. And you could do it on a resource thing, but since Hearts of Iron 3 saw us not really having, outside of somebody like the US, able to produce enough factories and produce, because you're using the same factories to produce, you know, your weapons of war is to produce other factories, so it's a little different than 4. So they were doing, okay, we're not looking at war with France, and we're probably going to bypass that with going off of prepare to invade. Okay, prepare to invade Poland. That's 14 days. We'll get a little more infrastructure, and we've done that. And I guess this will maybe also give us a casus belli. Here, I'm looking at, we're already in a alliance with them. Demand Slovenia. No, we don't need to do that right now. See, right now I don't want to go in, because this is the historical September. Time for the invasion of Poland. Accept foreign volunteers into our primarily Waffen SS, but no, they also do army too for the things. Prove national spirit, which we need to do that. But, well, as you may know, we're going to establish Volkswagen. World War II, as at least the war with Britain and France, was started by accident. Obviously, the invasion of Poland was not an accident, but yes, we have a west wall. Level 3 bunkers, I think, all around. That's probably enough to hold with 2 divisions and maybe with a bit of reserve. I guess we can produce more. Okay, we have full fuel silos. But we will add a couple of more. They build fairly fast. Build some more armaments factories. And what do we need? Okay, more trucks. We also need more anti-tanks soon. Oh, we also need a lot more tungsten. So let's oh, the tungsten here in this, if you don't know, is to simulate that high quality steel I was talking about earlier, not specifically tungsten. Sweden didn't have, to the best of our knowledge, that large of a supply of tungsten, but it's just represented with to measure out the high quality of steel that they had. That reacts sort of like as if you had mixed a percentage of tungsten into your steel. Looking at who else we might want to import from, seeing as the war is coming soon. Well, Norway, we could do. Well, let's do 16 from Norway. Hey, Pino. Good to have you here. When you've declared yourself neutral in the Great War, but the British boarded German ship in your neutral Norwegian fort. Yeah. Norway and its neutrality in World War II. That's an interesting topic. Okay, we need a little more. No, I don't want to get from Japan or anywhere really far away. Maybe Yugoslavia. No, it isn't fully, but it's just right on the border there. Well, the initial British proposal is, of course, to move troops through Narvik to support Finland in the Winter War. But that obviously ends with the Winter War ending, and so it's not done. There is definite British plans based on the belief, I don't know that they had any hard evidence, that Germany was likely to mess with Norway, to want to occupy Narvik to stop what we've been talking about here, is particularly in the wintertime, steel shipments to Germany. Churchill specifically, partially just because he is the naval minister at the time, head of the Admiralty, wants to mine Norwegian waters to, which obviously is violating their neutrality, most assuredly, to stop the shipments that way instead of out and out invading Norway. But the reason that Britain was able to react so fast to the German invasion of Norway is that they had already had their own planning, and meaning they had been marshalling French Alpine troops and British troops getting ready to invade somewhere in Norway themselves, that they were looking at doing. And so they were going to violate Norway's neutrality anyways. So yeah, so that's what would have happened, I think. But it wasn't so far along, my understanding, or such a done thing that like it was unstoppable. It was just more of a we're getting ready to do this, and so if the politicians decide to actually there we go, Kurt Student, to actually pull the trigger and invade, we'll be ready to go. But they were getting that close to it. Okay, we're going to get these guys, give them to Student, move them up to here. Now how no. Okay, transport planes 45. Okay, now wait 1.3. okay, transport ship, total base 2.7. No, I didn't want to do that. I keep doing that. Didn't want to do that. What I wanted to do was no, I want to look at their stats. Okay. Reliability, max speed, fuel usage. No. Okay, well, just I'm wondering, do I have enough air agility, speed, fuel usage? No, maybe I need to. Oh, come on! Didn't we get better trade going already? Okay, yeah. Now we're down to 1. Okay. There we go. Form the squadron. We'll just do it with all of it. Game area. Does the west wall and Hoi 4 going? So they're pretty much pushed back or straight everywhere, but Norwich. Both sides had little but rifles, except for the French. Yeah, the French did have a few. I think they were R-35s, tanks. You don't need a whole lot of transports, as Kurt students can get glider planes ability. Okay, cool. Quite honestly, I haven't used that with this. Yeah, they do the sort of Trondheim area that, like you say, does get the Allies get pushed back. Basically, the Allies are winning up in Narvik until they decide to pull out, and Germany's able to, in desperation, attack. I'm sort of oversimplifying all of this, of course, but push out there. I think it would have been a good idea for the British to really try to get a hold and keep Narvik. I don't know if that would have pushed Germany into invading Sweden or not, but I don't think the Germans had the ability to push up from the south, and I don't know if any of you know the terrain better than I'm sure some of you know better than I do, but with a really over land, they could have enforced pushing up here, and it's so far away from any airbase or likely air bases that the British probably could have maintained air superiority up here if they really worked on it. Okay, you did not click the button, okay, on the transport plane squadron. Did I not? Okay, I could mess that up. Nope, you're right. Too busy talking to you guys. There we go. There we go. Okay, good. Deploying. And I think at this point we're going to end the episode here. Not the live stream, so everybody can hang loose there. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the video. Love to have you around more. And, of course, please post questions, comments, suggestions, tips. Thanks so much. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.